Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, government leaders. We speak with each, one to one. New York is full of dichotomies. One of them is that we're home to the richest and the poorest. Some of us don't think twice about spending 4 figures for a dinner for 2 at a fine restaurant, while others stretch their stipends so they'll have enough to feed their families for the month. Karp is not a grocer, a restaurateur, or a farmer for that matter, but her work tries to ensure that more families have access to local and fresh produce. She's the founder and president of Karp Resources, and resourceful she is. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you have a degree from the Parsons School of Design and a master's degree in business.
Yes.
How do we get from there to food?
Well, food has been everywhere in between, actually. I moved to New York when I was 17 to go to school, went to Parsons, put myself through school essentially by working in restaurants. And what I really loved about the restaurant business was how social it was, that I could sort of just be friends with people while I was working, be very sociable in a professional context. And it was good for me because I'm essentially a bit of an introvert. I stayed in the restaurant business after graduating from Parsons because it remained the social outlet that I really liked, but also it was a way to make money, unlike being a struggling artist in New York City in the early 80s, although I did continue to make art for some time. And I managed a group of restaurants for about 7 years and then hung a shingle out and started my business, and a few years later realized, I probably should get a little bit more formal education in business to serve my clients well.
Now, the business you started, was it Karp Resources?
It was.
You started?
Yes.
Okay.
In 1990.
And was it your experience, what you saw in restaurants, that made you want to go into this area?
Yes. In fact, the area that we're in now, the niches that we're in, which is largely around increasing access to healthy food and rebuilding the regional agriculture economy so that there's more local food in the food system, that evolved over time. The first part of my business was really serving chefs who were working in 3- and 4-star restaurants and wanted to start their own businesses. So they would hire me to write their business plans for them. And because I had managed a group of restaurants for several years, it was a good fit for me.
So the mission really has changed over time.
It's evolved.
It has evolved over time.
It has. In 1992, so just a couple years after I started my business, I volunteered for the national anti-hunger group Share Our Strength that produces benefits in a variety of cities around the country. I don't know how many they do now. At the time it was 17 or so. And I volunteered to help produce the New York City Taste of the Nation event. And I did it pretty strategically because I realized I want to meet more chefs. They're going to be my customers. And it was the kind of event where all the good chefs in New York City get together and donate food or donate their time or donate this or donate that. And I was in charge of all the donations. Mm-hmm. So I was very much in touch with these guys donating their product, and I got to know them. But what I really got to know in working on that event was what was going on with hunger in New York City. And that's how I got involved with the anti-hunger group.
So is yours a business as opposed to a nonprofit?
We are a business.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I'm going to ask you a big question. What's the biggest obstacle to getting healthy food to people?
Oh, the biggest obstacle. The biggest obstacle probably is awareness and acclimation to a healthy diet, which we just don't really have in this country at the moment. The second biggest issue is access, is being able, once you are aware of what you should be eating to be healthier, being able to get it conveniently.
Do people not know what a healthy diet is after all of the food pyramids and the articles? Do they not know?
People don't know. Some people know, but most people don't know.
Okay, okay. I understand getting it, getting the healthy food, having access to it. Tell us about the Green Card Initiative.
Okay. The New York City Green Card Initiative was an idea of the New York City Health Department, and they worked to build a business model for increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables in low-income communities by proposing and having it approved special legislation that created 1,000 new street vending permits exclusively for the sale of fresh fruits and vegetables in low-income communities. The Green Card Initiative launched in June of 2008. We became involved in August of 2008. We're contracted by the Mayor's Fund, the City of New York, which is where the private foundation money goes to fund the program.
So does Karp Associates run it, essentially?
I say we run it. We run it in partnership with the health department and a number of community partners.
And I know that the law authorized the granting of 1,000 permits for these cards.
Correct.
So how's it going?
Well, I think it's going very well. We have about 500 of the permits are active at the moment. That's the highest number ever. There is a little bit of attrition every year in the winter. We have a new group of vendors that will be coming into the program in the next couple of months. 1,000 was a number they picked out of a hat. So when we're asked to comment on that as the success factor, you know, it might not look to everybody as a huge success, but in a recession, if you remember, the recession really hit around September of 2008.
Right.
So this program has been growing and expanding and thriving in a recessionary economy. We've created 500 new businesses and about 700 or 800 jobs for people in New York City, all around the selling of fresh fruits and vegetables.
In neighborhoods where they're not generally available. Is that one of the?
Correct.
Okay.
Not easily available.
Okay.
So the so-called food deserts are where our green carts are able to be. The specific neighborhoods were determined by a number of statistics that the health department researched over a number of years. They conduct a community health survey every 2 years, and they overlaid 3 different mapping systems, 3 different sets of statistics. One is the ratio of residents to supermarkets, so the lowest ratio of residents to supermarkets, overlaid with the highest rates of diet-related illnesses such as diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. And a third factor, which to me is the most interesting factor, and to your earlier question about do people not know, a survey, just a one-question survey done on the streets of New York every 2 years, when was the last time you ate a fresh fruit or vegetable? So these green cart zones are in neighborhoods with those other 2 statistics, plus the statistic of I have not eaten a fresh fruit or vegetable in the last 4 or 5 days.
Do these tend to be, who runs these carts? I mean, is it a largely immigrant population? Is it mixed? What is it?
It's largely immigrant. I would say about 90% of the vendors are immigrants, recent immigrants, or have been here for a year or 2 and have been employees on other people's street carts and have decided to become their own business people. So we provide all the support services that they could possibly need to get their businesses, their green cart businesses up and running, to get fresh fruits to them in an economical, efficient way. We help them with marketing. We help them with the fines that they get from the health department when they do things wrong or not do things wrong, but still get the fines. Community relations, community partnerships. And probably the thing I'm most proud of within the program, besides the sheer number of vendors, is that we have 19 now, and we'll have another 17 vendors that have wireless EBT machines at their carts, so they can accept food stamps or SNAP benefits on the carts.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, because I know that in recent years a lot more of the food markets have been accepting food stamps.
Yes, including farmers markets.
Okay, right,
yes.
right.
And our grant, actually, we were able to tag on to, because we have lots of good relationships in the ag department in New York, we were able to tag on to the New York Farmers Market Federation grant for providing EBT machines at farmers markets. We went to them and we said, you know, this isn't a farmers market, but it's mobile and it's a very important source of fruits and vegetables, and we were able to get this pilot program up and running.
Is the produce there cheaper than at supermarkets and farmers markets?
It's definitely cheaper than at many farmers markets, and it can
than at supermarkets.
And it can be cheaper than at supermarkets.
Okay.
And that's one reason why supermarkets don't like the green carts, because they consider them competition. The supermarkets that are functioning in those neighborhoods. Right. It's a typical street cart issue. You know, we're paying rent and all this overhead, and you guys are just on the street selling stuff. Right. So
the Bloomberg administration seems to be fairly progressive in trying to encourage healthy eating. I know requiring restaurants to post the caloric content of their menu offerings as one thing. I think they were made some attempts to reduce sugar and salt content in people's, I don't know
and trans fats.
where that has gone. I mean, is that an initiative that really happened, or were they just talking about it?
No, all those things are really happening.
Okay.
And Bloomberg is absolutely at the forefront of ensuring that that foods that are available publicly and by businesses are more healthful. He's absolutely there on the health. His particular policies are interesting because they are significantly about taking things away. We're going to remove the trans fat. We're going to remove the salt. My philosophy in this whole world of food access and healthy food is important to remove the bad stuff, but you have to add the good stuff.
Okay.
So going back to what we were talking about before the show started, not only increasing access of good and healthy food, but increasing access of delicious food and culturally appropriate food, and getting people to feel more comfortable about eating differently than they have been.
There's been a lot of talk in recent years about improving the quality of food served in the public schools, making it healthier. How successful has the city, how aggressive has the city been about actually doing that, and how successful has that been?
New York City is way ahead of the curve in terms of making their school food healthier. In fact, they've been on a very aggressive pursuit of removing all those same things, extra salt, extra fat, extra sugars, in some of the manufactured foods for a very long time.
And removing the vending machines and banning cupcakes.
I know. Let's not talk about cupcakes.
Okay.
Particularly on Valentine's Day. We need a treat every now and then. But and so in fact, the New York City Department of Education has the largest school population in the country. We have 1.2 million kids, and so when New York City makes a change, for example, when they go to their hamburger manufacturer or their bread manufacturer and they say, we want this a little bit differently, we want whole grain in our bread.
They have power.
They have buying power.
Right.
It also means that smaller districts all around the country benefit because they ride on the coattails of the buying power of New York City. New York City has a ways to go in making the food taste more delicious. That's a big criticism. But the food exceeds the USDA standards for school food, for nutrition.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more with Karen Karp, the president and founder of Karp Resources, after the following message.
That's it.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. When you adopt a child from foster care, just being there makes all the difference.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Karen Karp, the president and founder of Karp Resources. She gets better food to us, and more quickly and more affordably. I was talking to a Queens College student recently. She's a nutrition major, and she was saying how appalled she was to find out about the poor quality of food that is served in places like hospitals and nursing homes. A lot of canned food, a lot of salt, a lot of food that's not fresh. Why is the food so bad?
What a great question.
I mean, in places where you're supposed to be serving food's supposed to be helping people get well.
Well, you've asked another really important question, which is one of probably several questions that are right at the forefront of this shift, I think, that we're having in our nation's understanding about the importance of certain kinds of food and its relationship to health. I think what happened in hospitals and nursing homes, et cetera, taking the cost aside of good healthy food versus the kind of food you just described, I think the real issue is that as medicine has advanced and processes and drugs and technology has improved, doctors stopped learning about nutrition. Doctors don't learn about nutrition, and so it became very bifurcated. It's sort of like when you enter the medical system, you're treated with medicine and science, and food just completely fell by the wayside. It used to be that families had to bring food to the hospitals for the patients because hospitals didn't serve food.
Right.
But there became such a split in our understanding of what health is and what can create health and grow health. And now that's really starting to change. There are groups like Partners in Health, Healthcare Without Harm, that are really starting a movement to get better food in places like hospitals and old age homes. And
we probably don't even want to go into the quality of food that is served in prisons.
We don't. However, there is a bright light. There is a bright light there, which is it's not only a captive audience, but also a population with job training programs and other labor available, I should say. So there are more and more small gardens or small farms and gardens being planted on prison grounds, and prisoners are being taught to grow food and then cook that food in the cafeterias.
I think they need better cooking lessons, from what I've heard.
Well, probably there is that, but there are a whole bunch of groups working, believing that that prisoners released from jail who have good sensibility about food, not if they're going to be a cook, but just a good sensibility about food, will enable them to be more grounded in their communities and connected to their families. And the same with vets. There's a whole trend now of vets coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan learning how to farm.
Right. I mean, I was reading about in the Times about a program in California.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because apparently farmers are dying out. They're aging and getting out of the business.
They are. They are. That's been a trend in this country since I was a little girl.
So what's going to happen? I mean, does that mean we'll be getting? Does this mean more agribusiness, or does it mean we'll be getting more food from other countries?
Well, certainly if the trend continues, we are going to run out of farmers, even though, in the United States, even though there's an enormous interest among young people to farm. What's interesting about the young people coming into farming now is that many of them, most of them probably, are not sons and daughters of farmers, but have a kind of sort of new age ideal about values around living and values around food and values around health. Part of the issue is that they're really focusing on very small scale agriculture,
right,
and they're not becoming the farmers farming the mainstream farms, and that's what we really need. And there's a term for that. It's called ag of the middle. So it's the middle-sized farms, the ones that are not totally tipped on the scale of industrial agriculture, but the ones that are several hundred to 500 or 600 acres that are really producing and need to produce more of the fruits and vegetables.
One of your big issues is getting more local food into New York City markets. So what is local food, and why is it a problem getting it into New York City market?
Well, local food is one of those things that there is no government definition for, and there's lots of people who think that that's a bad thing. I and many others think that that's a good thing, because local is really about where you are and where you are in relationship to your region and in relationship to your production area. When we were working on the New York City Wholesale Farmers Market project, we defined local as New York and adjacent states for a number of reasons, including that the study was funded by the New York State government, but because we really looked at New York City and where is local food potentially to come from. It's not just upstate New York, but it's also New Jersey and Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. Some of the biggest issues in getting local food into a metropolitan area like New York City have to do with distribution. Not that we don't have trucks, but that we don't have the right trucking services available for the right scale of producer. And that's something that has started to self-correct a little bit with new businesses getting started in local food distribution over the last 5 or 6 years. But we also need a central place in the food distribution zone of New York City, which is the Hunts Point area. We need a designated place for this local food to come to stay differentiated. There's a lot of food that comes into Hunts Point Produce Terminal Market today that comes from the region, but once it gets there, it loses its provenance. You don't know the buyers don't know where it's from.
Does New York City get a lot of food from the Amish in Pennsylvania? Is that a source of?
The farmers in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, many of them sell in farmers markets and many of them sell in the wholesale sector, but most of them actually sell in a produce auction that takes place in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So it is a version of a wholesale farmers market in that the farmers come and sell cases and pallets of their product to buyers such as retail chains and restaurants, et cetera.
I see. You have said, and you touched on that just a minute ago, that the real challenge is improving the entire delivery system for food.
Correct.
And you talk about getting, you know, the trucks to the right people in the right places. Are there other elements of that delivery system?
Well, a lot of people are looking at rail now, which is a little bit back to the future, because rail was the dominant way that New York City got its food once rail was established in the 1800s. And that was really when we started getting food from all over the country, was when the rail lines were created in the 1850s, 1860s. Then it became more convenient to get food from trucks,
right,
because trucks could go out into the areas, and gas became very cheap. Rail is being looked at again because we're going to be having some more high-speed rail. It's more efficient, more effective. And when the fuel prices really catch up with the food prices, we're going to see that we need alternate ways to get food to New York City.
Now tell me about FoodWorks.
FoodWorks is Speaker Christine Quinn's food policy platform. I was a member of about a 12-person advisory group that got together every couple weeks for 10 months to help craft her policy agenda that she's putting forth.
And what is that? What are some of the elements of that?
There are about 57 pieces of legislation that are coming out, that are going to try to come out of that report. But there are about 9 or 10 main points.
Okay.
And, smartly, many of them are focused around job creation. So a lot of us feel that, and we've actually quantified it, that if we're able to increase the volume of local food that's coming into New York City, which the demand is billions of dollars of demand for local food, and people want local food not only in its fresh form, but they want it in what's called a value-added processed form. You want a bag of chopped lettuce, you want sliced carrots, you want a tomato sauce, you want all those things that you like to get from the supermarket with a local component to them. So she has a lot of propositions in there for creating jobs through establishing value-added processing facilities connected to the distribution points in New York City, which would be really fantastic.
Okay.
The City Council was the entity that passed the Green Cart legislation, so they're very much in favor of keeping the Green Cart program going and supporting it. There was just a hearing last week. Councilmember Brewer is proposing that New York City school food procure a certain number or volume or percentage of their products locally, which they already do, but they want it a little bit more formalized. Mm-hmm. And there is a law that's somewhere in the process for every other city agency to make a plan for purchasing local food and to be able to quantify it and evaluate the purchasing of local food compared to other food.
There used to be a lot of community gardens around New York City. Mm. I don't see them so much anymore. Are they gone? And I mean, what's happened to the community gardens?
The community garden people were the most vocally active group when Christine Quinn released her report. It was fascinating. Like you, I have also noticed that some of the community gardens I remember in the 80s and 90s are no longer there. And I don't know the exact statistics. I think it's very much when the real estate boom was happening, a lot of those properties were re-released to developers.
Right.
I think now that we have a real estate lull, we have more chance of preserving the community gardens that are there. But the other interesting thing that's really happening is that urban farms are starting. And there's a wonderful farm in Red Hook that has sparked a research study to identify how that model, which is on 7 acres of unused baseball fields, how that model can be replicated in other disused recreational areas around the city.
How big is it?
That one is about 7 acres.
Okay.
So they're looking at other parks and ball fields and things like that that are not fully utilized.
Has the poor state of the economy had an impact on the way people think about food and eating healthy, do you think?
Well, I think more people are thinking and talking about food than ever before, despite the economy. Probably because the prevalence of the diet-related illnesses and all the news about obesity is just constant and growing, and the statistics are getting a lot worse. I think it does make it slightly more challenging to create personal incentives for people to buy healthier food if they're more expensive, if there's greater unemployment, for example. And less family income. That's a schism that is happening right now. Luckily, there are a lot of government incentives. The child nutrition reauthorization just happened, so there'll be more money in school food, for example. A real push to get more healthy food through food stamps. So I think at the same time, there are some government incentives coming forth to get more healthy food or encourage more healthy eating through subsidies and the limited income that some New Yorkers have.
And I understand, well, I introduced you as a farmer. You don't really grow vegetables, but you raise oysters on Long Island?
I do.
Do you sell them? Or
No, I actually can't sell them, although we're doing so great with them that we have a great survival rate. I joined a community program through the Cornell Cooperative Extension, which has a marine center out in Southold where I have a house, and they started this program to help reseed the bays with oysters to help clean the bays up. So it's really an anti-pollution, environmental protection activity, and oysters used to be the #1 business activity, the #1 area of commerce for the east end of Long Island. So the program's been going on about 7 or 8 years. I think I joined in the first or second year, and it's been enormously successful. The bays are the cleanest they've been in my lifetime.
Wow. And you also get oysters to bring home to eat?
We get about 1,000 a year.
Okay. That's a lot of oysters.
It is. I make a lot of friends.
We're out of time. I want to thank Karen Karp, the founder and president of Karp Resources, for joining me today. For more information, check out their website, Karp Resources. Am I saying that right?
You are.
KarpResources.com. For the City University and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.